So Night School is directed by Malcolm D. Lee, who is the previous director of Girls Trip, and this movie stars Kevin Hart as a very successful barbecue salesman under the name of Teddy, who after the explosion of the barbecue shop upon which he works at, he is required to find a new job. However, his one restriction in doing so is that he does not currently have his GED, which means he has to attend night school, taught by Tiffany Haddish's character, in order to get his GED and get a new job. Now, Kevin Hart, I think, is a very likeable actor. I think he's very, very funny in places. I think he can really deliver the laughs when he needs to, and I just think he's a very charismatic lead in any role that he takes. You know, I think in previous films, you know, such as Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle last year, or Central Intelligence back in 2016, I think Kevin Hart really has the comedy chops to pull off a lead role. And in this movie, while he's definitely charming and while he's definitely good as he always is, I just didn't find his character to be that particularly funny. And this isn't necessarily to do with Kevin Hart himself, as I think he does the best with what he's given to work with, but what he is given to work with is not very strong. I feel the writing in this movie is just not very funny, and I'll get onto that later, but I really feel like with his character, it really gave Kevin Hart a disservice. Also, he has a big production credit in this film because this film was actually produced by Heartbeat Productions, which is his own studio. So I don't know, you know, how much input he had into the creative side of it and how much input he had into the writing, and also maybe in terms of the improv, but personally this didn't really feel like a Kevin Hart role. Now, Tiffany Haddish obviously became a massive rising star coming out of Girls Trip, and she is of course reprising with Malcolm D. Lee here, and she's great in this movie. I think, you know, Tiffany Haddish does a really good job. You know, I wasn't actually the biggest fan of Girls Trip, and I wasn't actually the biggest fan of her character in it. I thought she was actually very good in the movie, but I didn't really feel like her character was that particularly funny. I think she was a bit, you know, crude for the sake of it, just kind of doing all these crude jokes just because they could. And in this movie, I think she's a lot more funny. She's able to play a lot more of a natural character, a lot more someone who felt a bit more real to me. So I was able to actually connect with that a bit more. And therefore, I think her character played on me a lot better than her one in Girls Trip did. So I have to say that Tiffany Haddish, maybe one of my favourite roles I've seen her in. I mean, she hasn't done too much since Girls Trip, but I really like the fact that she is obviously experimenting, doing a bit more outside of films as well. And I think this is definitely one of her better film roles too. Now, there is the rest of the night school class, and I have to say, as soon as they enter the film, it gets a lot better. There's a lot of actual characters there who provide a lot of good backdrop. A lot of them are stereotypes, especially like Rob Riggle's character. He basically plays the same character he plays in every single movie. But I do feel like, while they are stereotypes, they do add a bit more to play off of in the film, and it just makes it a bit more interesting. It's still nothing spectacular, but again, it adds something a little bit more to chew on. Now, the biggest crime that this movie commits is that it's just not very funny. Obviously, this is a comedy. You go into it expecting to laugh, and I didn't laugh much. I got a couple of giggles here and there, a couple of chuckles, but there was never anything gut-busting. There was never anything really hilarious, laugh-out-loud moments. It was pretty dry and pretty drab, to be honest with you, and I didn't really find any of the jokes in this film to be particularly funny. I think it was a pretty easy, lazy comedy in that sense, and that's a real shame because, again, Kevin Hart can do really good comedies, so can Tiffany Haddish. So it was really a shame to kind of see how this movie was so uncharacteristically unfunny. I also think this film is just very choppy. I think it's very poorly edited, and there are many scenes in this film that just kind of cut to different parts here and there, and it's very, very unfocused and just makes you really step out of it and takes you out of it for a little bit. And I really didn't appreciate that. I'm having this problem with a lot of movies at the moment. It seems to be like a lot of films are having editing problems, so you need to sort yourself out because this is getting really annoying now. But it's just, I keep saying this about a lot of movies, and it's disappointing because obviously sometimes in trailers you can't really foresee that coming, so then when it happens in the movie you're like, oh. But again, I have to obviously say my opinion, and here with this film, I feel like the editing, it just really put me off. Also, it's far too long. Far too long. This film should easily be an hour and a half, but it's so close to 2 hours. I think it's an hour and 51 minutes, something like that. It's ridiculously too long. Like, there are so many instances in which this movie could end, and there's so many moments where, you know, you could just cut to the ending, but the movie just kept going and going and going, and it was to the point where I was just like, holy god, like, just end please, because there was just so much dragged out scenes. Like, even the comedy skits inside of the movie itself, the scenes are so dragged out to the point where you just know they're trying to fill out the runtime for no reason, especially because an average runtime for a comedy is about an hour and a half to an hour 40, so why they were trying to stretch it out closer to 2, I don't know, because they didn't have the compelling actual script to make that happen and to make it justify. So overall, this movie just comes across as being really dragged out and far too long for a comedy that needs to be. Overall, I think Night School is a very disappointing comedy. I found it to be very boring, quite frankly, and I think it's just a very lazy written comedy. And while the performances are great and its cast are very capable, I feel like the film is just far too long in order to keep your entertainment there. And also just mix that with the poor editing and everything else that I've mentioned in this review, I think it comes across as a very poor attempt at what is an already established story. And I feel like this film could have done a lot better, especially because this comes across to me as one of the low points for Kevin Hart's filmography. So did you guys see Night School? If you did, tell me all your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let's have a conversation about Night School. And as always, guys, if you want to see more movie reviews from me, be sure to subscribe. And I hope to see you guys again in my next video.